Okay, so I've been sitting here trying to put my thoughts in order about how to best format what I'm about to talk about, but I've not come to a clean answer, so I'm just going to start talking about it and then we're just going to deal with the disorganized mess that it is. But basically, I've been trying to think about how to best handle the situation the channel's in overall, call it the algorithm, call it audience behaviors or whatever, but viewership has been down and trending down for a while now. This is a thing where people will sneeringly be like,
Haha, I told you so. The furry rebrand was a bad idea, and I knew it from the start.
and it's not accurate. In fact, I can very specifically recall a memory about how inaccurate that claim is because I know exactly when the rebrand was happening because I was very excited about it and where I was, which is that I remember that I was sitting in Bird's living room because I was visiting him in Seattle for PAX West, and I had just written the part of the script for the Ad Astra video where I say that Neferu is a messy bitch. Uh, it's just seared into my mind. And at that moment, I was DMing Mash about on Twitter about having the new sidebar art for Marrow, all those little waist up pictures, and then it was the first generation of them. I went on to commission several more since then for specific franchises and so on. And I was I was messaging him like, "Oh right, Halloween is coming up. We should have a scared horror Marrow to go with all the other ones because that's literally the thing that's going to be in high demand soon when it's coming up." So that's all the way back at PAX before Halloween. And while I was there, I specifically was talking to Bird about how yeah, the channel used to pull in 1 million views a month, and it's been trending down to the point where for the last year it's been sitting there at about 600K a month. It's been after I want to say 6+ years of always either holding steady or growing, it just kind of stopped doing that. And whenever I talk about this in any context, people want to blame it on the furry thing because they're obviously seething about that apparently, and they want to be able to be right about something. But it's just, I hate to tell you, but I'm very aware of the surrounding scenario, and it's just very obviously not that. In fact, the furry stuff is consistently the top performing content, which is actually what we're here to talk about today. Because I think that it's about time for us to reassess the schedule and how it's been set up. So what happened is that a long time ago, I was asked on Patreon, "Hey, you like video essays and you like discussing stuff at length and so on and so forth. Are you ever going to make video essays yourself since you like them so much?" And at that time, in that Patreon Q&A, I said, "No, there's no way. I'm so busy all the time. How would anyone ever have time for that, to get that involved in that kind of thing?" I had that, those bad feelings of oh man, I I wanted to do this thing all the way back in 2013, and then I never properly got glomped onto I was working on a Resident Evil 6 script all the way back in 2013 and just didn't finish that video. And if I'd been doing it all along, I could have a different career essentially on YouTube, or at least this other bonus channel thing. But as you all know, I almost said let's plays. I do video essays now. They're here. Got pretty sidetracked here with this 6 hours of nightmare. Oh my goodness. I'm trying very hard to make something that's not 7 hours long this time around next. But when I was refocusing on making video essays, I think it was around the time I finished the Annihilation one or something, or maybe the Monster Hunter one, I was like, okay, I want to do this and I want to take it more seriously. I'm going to redo the schedule for the Let's Play channel so that I can have a bit more free time to work on this stuff, which has paid off in that I have gotten those video essays done and all that. But that's why we have this big, complicated setup here where I wanted to maintain what we had at the time, the diversity of time slots, but I wanted to also shrink the number of videos that were being made overall. At the time, this was a successful experiment, not only because it increased my availability to work on other things and also just have a life and be an adult and just have a healthy work-life balance and all that, but also maintain the variety. And also the dirty secret with a lot of this stuff is that less videos is often better, because more people will actually watch the videos when they're not being spammed out at this crazy rate. I know some people are mad that this is like kind of confusing to think about, but a lot of you in reality kind of just browse YouTube via the front page and watch whatever gets served up to you when it happens to come out. So the reality is that a lot of people just don't really think about the schedule that much to begin with. They just like are waiting. They're like, next video will come out at some point, and then it'll show up when I happen to have YouTube open, and I'll be like, I'll click on that video. And that's the thought process, besides, instead of like the people who like actively or can't wait to be here at exactly 1 p.m. to watch Overwatch the stream VOD and so on. But the way that I approach this thing is I wanted to maintain the variety. Let's try to zoom in on this a bit because it's very small. Shut up. My approach here was that at the time I had the Patreon slot, obviously, because the Patreon thing is like, this is my stroke of genius, is having Patreon vote on a series is like, one, a great perk for Patreon. It gets people to watch, it gets people to actually go on the Patreon and support my channel and make this entire endeavor possible. But also, whatever people happen to vote for has some kind of level of zeitgeist, whether it be like it's some kind of undercurrent of interest that then manifests in the Patreon series being one of, if not the most popular playthroughs at the time, most of the time, because everyone voted on it, so they clearly collectively want to watch it. Then we have the fact that I have this whole back. I obviously I love playing indie games, but also like I have this whole like thing where I'm known as being the one who played like Witness and Oberdin. Like I'm kind of like the puzzle guy to some extent, and which is an underserved thing on YouTube because people get scared off from playing puzzle games, in part because people always criticize you. People are kind of mean in the comment sections of puzzle games, and so people immediately have this like stove hot, do not touch stove reaction to puzzle games, and they stop covering them immediately, which is the same thing I had originally in like 2011, but when I came back to covering them around like 2015 or so on, I realized that this is an underserved niche and I enjoy doing it, and you guys also enjoy it, even if you don't always show it in the way you react to the with your words, because clearly people are watching it and look forward to the next thing. It's just people are mean about why isn't he doing the thing all the time, but that's just kind of one of the things you get used to in a comment section. Then there was the AAA/Classic slot, which is twice a week, but it's an hour long. So this green slot here, which is currently Resident Evil 4 Remake, it gets as much coverage as Fallout and Signalis, because this is 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes for an overall 2 hours, and this is 1 hour, 1 hour for an overall 2 hours. What you'll see here is that the unbalanced part of here is Planescape, the RPG slot, gets 4 full hours a week. Now, I thought I had very sound reasoning for this, because I am kind of like the RPG guy, especially the Souls games and so on. That's not a unique thing. A lot of people are popular for specifically playing Souls games and so on, and I have done all of them, most of them multiple times. But also like any other RPGs type stuff. Like I've been covering RPGs consistently since the beginning of this channel a decade ago. So it just seemed obvious, like, oh, have an RPG slot, and you know what? Since they're big, long games, make them take up more time. Like I switched the RPG slot to being an hour long, and then we finally played Pillars of Eternity, which was over 100 episodes even when it was an hour long episodes. And then when I made this specific schedule, I was like, well, obviously the overall budget of hours in the week, there should be twice as much for the RPG slot, because RPGs are long. It's very simple, straightforward logic. The problem is that the RPG slot has been consistently the lowest performing slot on the channel for basically the entire time I've had this schedule format. And there's a question to be had there, is like, are people just genuinely disinterested in RPGs, regardless of whether or not I built an audience off of them originally, or are people just not keeping up with that time slot because it has twice as much content as all the other ones? And I don't really have the clear answer. There is data here that's worth looking at, which is that like I did this poll when I finished Yakuza 5. So, and this is like, okay, what RPG should I play less? And next, and out of all the options, including a modded Dark Souls campaign and Deus Ex, and even playing the Final Cut Definitive Edition thing of Disco Elysium, which is a very popular series in general, and then like covering the sequels to various playthroughs that I've done before, including Fallout, Golden Sun, Pillars of Eternity, KOTOR, Yakuza. This is a bit of a joke suggestion though, because I just finished 5, so I expected this to come in last. And then some wild cards, like should I go back and play The Witcher, or should I play Weird West, which seems neat. Out of all of these, Planescape Torment won. Witcher is now winning by 1 because this poll was never closed, so people can still vote on it. But like 500 plus votes, very definitively and clearly, okay, maybe not definitively is maybe overstating it, but Planescape won. So the interest is there, and the logic with the Patreon slot stuff should be that should perform well, right? But instead, this is like the lowest performing thing on the channel, which is consistent with, like look at this, 278 views right next to Gartic Phone getting 1.5 thousand. Like Signalis has double the views, Fallout has triple the views. Remember the Flowers gets math difficulty, but 14 times the views. That's like comparing a skyscraper to a suburban house. And I'm not here to rag on the RPG slot, or and some of these are apples and oranges. This is a premiere, and this is a let's try of a game people like, and this is part 48 of an RPG. But one way or another, I am giving the lion's share of my schedule to the least popular content on my channel, and that just is seemingly like an increasingly bad idea. But there's other context to where it's like I'm building the case for the big overall thing I'm working through in my head here. And I meant to kind of pose this video as a question, but it's kind of more just becoming a done deal the more I talk about it, because I've spent all morning thinking about this, and I think it's time to change something. But let's get to the thread itself, which is why I'm making this video. I made this Twitter thread, and then I was like, I should get the YouTube audience involved in this. Not so much involved in the decision making, but just kind of get everyone on the same page instead of just people that are on Twitter. Especially since it's so much just furry art retweeting that it's less my YouTube announcement Twitter account and more just a personal account for whatever I want to do with it. But here I said, since Stephanie's busy all the time, I'm kind of wondering how good or horrible an idea it would be to start Arches with Toaster. Arches being the sequel to Echo, by the way. A fellow Echo fan before I finished Echo. It's a sequel, but to a game without a canon ending across multiple routes, with new main characters. So Howley, the one of the writers of Echo and the creator of Echo and Ad Astra, went on and just finished a sequel. Yesterday was my birthday, and that was also the same day that the Patreon version of the Arches finale came out. So it's a finished visual novel. It's a sequel to Echo, but it's also, if you want to get real specific, it's arguably, I can't get that specific because I haven't played it yet, obviously, but it sounds like it's more of a spin-off of Echo, in that it takes place later, but with a new cast of main characters and not direct connections narratively, which makes sense because Echo itself has, I was going to say 5 endings, but I guess it probably has 10 endings because of the good and bad ones. And that's only counting the bad endings that make it to the end and not like the early bad endings that sometimes exist, I guess. So Echo has an ambiguous ending. So the setting exists and they can revisit it later, but they kind of have to dodge a lot of the stuff. So it won't necessarily spoil specific elements of Echo. But I lost my train of thought a little bit here. This is why we script things, but that's way more time consuming. And I know this might seem like a bit of a left turn for the video, even though this is arguably the reason I'm making the video, but I started with the whole thing about the schedule. But these two things are going to mix here, because the issue here is I'm giving all of my time on the schedule right now to RPGs, the least popular thing, and I'm giving almost no time to the most popular thing on the channel, which is furry visual novels, like by a mile. But let's just finish this thread so I can make this nightmare ADHD video a little less of a nightmare, but it's already kind of out the window, whatever. So people love the furry visual novel stuff and watch it more than anything, which I hinted at a minute ago with the Remember the Flowers stuff, but also that's just kind of consistently true. And let's look at this. Here's my analytics. So as I said, about 600,000 views per month. It's still consistent from what I said all the way back before Halloween last year. It's very consistent. And you can see that, but right now we're in a bit of a low point in that we don't currently have Echo videos coming out, and we haven't for almost a month because Stephanie is just very busy in general. And so you can see watch time is down, subscribers are down, revenue is down, but not like a massive amount, but it's not trending up or maintaining an overall. But like here we can see the top 10 videos for the last 30 days. And I think that this will be interesting to some people. So first off the bat, an animated, which is fitting. Animated videos that's just always cool shit. Like if you look at Game Grumps' channel, even though they are Let's Players all the time, their most popular videos are the animateds, which are done of the commentary from the rest of their channel's content. It's like an event thing. One, it's a highlight of some of the funniest stuff that's happened on the channel and stuff that people find memorable, but it's also recontextualized in a way that's more fun to watch than just watching a 90-second gameplay clip, especially of a visual novel, out of context. So like, animateds are great content. I can't depend on those. I don't make animateds, so it's cool that Full Perp made 2 animateds, and it's cool that they're getting the attention they deserve, and that 2 of my top 10 videos of the month are the views that are getting pulled in by these 2 animated videos. And they're both old enough that does not include the launch views, but just the views they've gotten over the last month, which does not include, like, March 12th is more than a month ago, so that whatever spike happened originally is not included, and it's still my number 1 video right now. The next 2 videos are rant videos, where I just kind of... This was literally, like, just a dumb video about TikTok, where I just was like, look at my annoying TikTok dashboard, and here was me talking about the Mario movie Unscripted. These are my next most popular videos. Then we have a furry visual novel Let's Try, and another furry visual novel Let's Try. That's 2 of these videos. Then we have episode 65 of Echo, which is actually insane. Like, almost, like, it's not normal for a playthrough to maintain viewership long into its duration. Like, you've all seen this. Like, they obviously diminish down the longer the playthrough gets. I just talked about how it's not fair to compare a Let's Try to episode whatever of Planescape, because that's like the 48th hour of Planescape. Like, obviously it's going to have less viewership, right? I tricked you. Part 65 of Echo still has crazy viewership despite being part 65. Whoa. But like, this is what I'm getting at a little bit. Like, I'm kind of like putting too much energy into making content that people don't necessarily want to watch. And it's kind of maybe time to rethink this a little bit. So what I'm pointing at here is that, one, I don't know about the future of the channel. I'm not saying I'm planning on like canceling it or quitting or anything. Like, obviously not. I'm just saying, like, just logistically, it's worth wondering, like, what does the future of this channel look like a little bit? Because I am a guy who built his entire audience off of making long form playthroughs where you're like, here's Pillars of Eternity, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. You put them out at a regular schedule. You hit part 70, you hit part 100. You go through until you finish it. Then once you finish the game, you start a new game. That's a rule I've stuck to very hard, and people like that. But it's not necessarily working. Like, it's nuts that part 65 of this playthrough is beating part 1 of this playthrough, which is a new video that is completely contained within the last month and so on. And that Signalis, which is a spectacular game. I have genuinely considered multiple times, and it might still happen, writing a video essay about Signalis. Like, I think about it a lot. And so, like, this is cool, and I liked playing it, and the people that are watching it are probably enjoying it. But it's barely beating part 65 of a visual novel that I uploaded a month ago to this day. Like, and that's the premiere. These are like the biggest spikes of viewership you get on a channel, and then they go down from there. A series trends down the longer that it's out. So the fact that I'm struggling to get it to work, or just the fact that I'm struggling to make my existing content perform as well as it ever did before, and whenever I make anything that isn't that, it performs way better. That's when you start wondering, like, do I need to make changes? Do I need to reconsider what the future of the channel is, or what kind of content I specifically make? Something that comes to mind a little bit, this is a bad example because I don't actually watch this channel, but PewDiePie was once upon a time specifically known as being the biggest Let's Player, or the biggest gaming channel, or whatever, back when he was like playing horror games and making kind of annoying, very strong reactions to jump scares and so on. And around the time that all the controversies were coming out around PewDiePie, what I noticed was that like all of his content was him sitting in like a cubicle and like reacting to stuff or talking about stuff or whatever. And you just kind of noticed like, oh, there was a variety of gaming content channels that kind of just pivoted to a different kind of content entirely. And that's just what happened. And that stuff did well for them. And so to some extent, when I think about these little things, like that's kind of me like poking around and being like, what kind of stuff should I be making that if the gaming content isn't really pulling people in, like, would people rather watch me talk about the Mario movie than watch Planescape Torment Part 48? And the answer is definitively yes, in that very specific comparison, at least. But at the very least, I think like the thing is, I don't want to rebrand the identity of the channel. I don't really want to massively change gears. If I adapt by being like, hey, let's upload some shorts, let's upload little rant videos, and that's like a supplement that helps the thing out, then that's nice. You'll notice that like I made posts last month with a similar experiment where I focused really heavy on making shorts for a little while. And if we went back in time, and I did have tweets showing it, I think, at the time, but I don't have them on hand right now. But back a month or two ago, this top 10 right here, it was completely full of shorts. Like, that's what I mean when I say whenever I do anything besides uploading normal Let's Plays, that's the best content on my channel as far as viewership goes. Is that this time, like a month or two ago, the top content on my channel was multiple episodes of the Echo playthrough, a few of the shorts that I had uploaded that were like little shorts where I took moments from Echo or Ad Astra and I kind of animated them with the little character sprites and our voices and all that. It was one of these animateds, because the Echo one wasn't out yet. There was Ad Astra was obviously in there, and it was specifically the podcast that I did with Cloud Cuckoo Country, where it's like, hey, it's me and Toaster and Cuckoo, and we're all going to talk about furry shit for a podcast. They've taken over. That outperformed every podcast I've done like in like the last year. So it's the most popular podcast, basically. And it was also in my top 10 videos for the month. So it's like, it's just worth at some point reconsidering what the schedule is. And so this is where I drop the nightmare bomb that'll piss some people off. But what I'm specifically considering doing is I'm considering making the indie/puzzle time slot permanently a furry visual novel time slot, at least for the time being. Like, obviously, like, we might dry up the supply a bit, but why not make the content people want to watch? But I don't plan on stopping playing indie games and puzzle games. In fact, I might play more of them now, because the thing is, that was my favorite time slot, even before the furry stuff came in. And and the thing is here is I'm not talking about playing furry visual novels with a gun to my head, like, oh no, I'm being forced to do this for the sake of viewership. Like, what am I going to do? I want to. Like, I've had fun doing I've had fun doing the playthrough with Stephanie of Ad Astra and Echo, and, like, that's cool shit that I enjoy doing. Those are fun playthroughs. People enjoy the banter, the dynamic of two people hanging out and talking and playing a game and going through the narrative and theorizing about it, and also having tangents along the way and so on. Like, that's a format people have enjoyed since back when we did it with Phoenix Wright, and people have enjoyed it previously with Zero Escape with Andrew. I've done it with multiple different people and recreated that formula, even if people won't necessarily identically love each version of that, because obviously Stephanie and Andrew are different flavors. But I've done that kind of format multiple times, and people generally like that. So, like, I think I should lean more heavily on that. And I think I should have, like, if not a furry visual novel, then at least a visual novel slot. It'd probably be furry at first. Go through like arches and maybe get caught up on glory hounds. I've had my eyes on glory hounds because that's specifically like most furry visual novels are famously not done yet, but glory hounds is designed to have each chapter be like kind of standalone. Like it's like here's a story arc, and then it like ends, and then it's like it's a natural ending point to then hang out and wait a few months for the next chunk of story. And so it's like episodic in a way that like Saturday morning cartoons were, as opposed to episodic in the way that like Life is Strange was, where it was constantly being like, well, what's going to happen next? And then you forgot what happened and it got frustrating. But like, I don't want to stop playing indie games and puzzle games. And so that's why I'm bringing up the RPG stuff, because I'm like, I think there's like two options here. One, I take indie games and puzzle games and I throw them into the classic slash this like AAA / classic slot, which is, this is my least favorite slot. I like playing classic games from my childhood every now and then, or ones that I missed, obviously. That's the fun part. Modern AAA games I am actively disinterested in. So it's pretty much just like, oh man, a new Resident Evil came out. It's like half of those games that I play. And nowadays it's like there's Jedi Fallen Order and its upcoming sequel that I would like I would like to play that sequel at some point. But for the most part, I don't care about that. So like I was like, do I make indie puzzle compete with this slot? And then it just becomes like a generic slot where I just basically just pick whatever I want out of all those categories. And we just kind of give up on trying to categorize it. Like, I played Witness this month, or not Witness. I played the newest Myst sequel, Firmament, this month, and then I played Jedi Fallen Order. Who cares? Or, and it's kind of seeming more likely, do I chop this RPG slot in half and just have RPGs have as much coverage each week as a normal game, undo that part where it gets double the coverage, which means that RPGs will take twice as long to get covered, but I get to maintain all of these options at once. Like I get to keep bouncing between indie games and puzzle games that people like. I get to cover the furry visual novels that like are by far the leading thing that people want to watch on the channel. Just that's the results speak for themselves. It's very clear that that's what you guys collectively like. Like I don't like the idea of making RPGs take twice as long. I don't love the idea that, like, if I played Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire or Dreadfire or whatever, that I swear it would probably take 8 months to get through, which is just an astonishing endeavor. And like I'm trying to get through the like Yakuza the series and so on and so forth. And like I was thinking of putting the Tears of the Kingdom Zelda game in the RPG slot because there just kind of wasn't anywhere else to put it, and it is going to be very long. So like it's not an easy choice schedule wise, but like it seems to be the thing worth doing, and to some extent, like, yeah, like when you think about it, like the furry visual novels are essentially like my niche, and covering the same games as everybody else, like Resident Evil 4 or Jedi Survivor or Tears of the Kingdom, which I still want to cover. But like focusing on that stuff is to my detriment because it's what everyone else on the planet is playing. Whereas covering furry visual novels is kind of unique in that there are like 2 or 3 competing channels that I know of, because I've seen them all. I know who they are. I recognize their thumbnails and everything, but none of them have the specific format that I have where I'm hanging out with a second person and doing it this way. So I become a niche within a niche where I'm covering games that almost no one's covering, and I'm doing it in a way that none of the other people are covering. And I think that's why those videos perform so much better than like, oh, wow, you're playing the popular game that everyone else is playing? Cool. So this is my overall situation. That's the I kind of started at the end here because I wanted to talk about the Arches logistics and so on, and Stephanie more at the beginning because that's what spawned this whole thought process that I'm on right now. But the end result has been me discussing changing my schedule again, and to facilitate better making the content that people want to watch. And we'll rewind back to Stephanie stuff a bit and Arch's stuff a bit more specifically. I guess that stuff's more niche. So it makes sense to kind of backlog that or backload that in the overall discussion. But something that I've been thinking about this whole time is I've been thinking about Overwatch 2, which is that Overwatch was a game where you played as 2 tanks, 2 damage characters, and 2 supports. And the matchmaking was really fucked because tank was the least popular role in the game, arguably tank and support, but especially tank. And it's partly because people didn't get how to play it, partly because it felt less rewarding on some level, or that you needed to depend on your teammates, or just the fact that there was fewer characters in the roster. Like there was just so many damage characters that it's always been the popular role in the party, and so it led to the situation where tank players were getting matches like instantly in Overwatch 1, and if you went into matchmaking as a DPS character, you would just take forever to get a match by comparison. So what Overwatch 2 did is they reassessed things. They knew what the vision of the game was that they wanted to have, and they tried to make that work for years. But at some point, you just look at like your audience and how they're playing your game, and you like try to meet them halfway and like, you know, go meet them where they are instead of constantly hoping that a different audience existed. I realize how cynical this sounds because I do not, once again, I'm not playing visual novels with a gun to my head, so this is not the same scenario, but I think it's a helpful comparison, which is that they then, in Overwatch 2, got rid of one of the tanks. It went from being a 6-player game to being a 6 versus 6 game to a 5 versus 5 game. There's 1 tank, 2 supports, and 2 damage characters in each party. They just looked at the popularity of each role, and they rebalanced the game around there being 1 less person in the unpopular role. And that has significantly improved overall matchmaking. You can say other stuff about how it worked with balancing and whatnot, or how it worked with how those characters were designed in the first place as far as tanks or the loss of tank synergies, but that's a whole nightmare tangent to go down. But like the idea of taking what you have and looking at like the reality of of player behaviors and then meeting them halfway, like that's kind of what I've been thinking about here, where I'm like, why am I making the lion's share of the content be the least watched thing, and I'm making the least of the most watched thing? Like that's, maybe I should reconsider my base assumptions about what I've been doing here. And on some level it makes a lot of sense. Like part of me would panic about the idea of like, why would you make one time slot entirely the most incredibly specific genre of gameplay possible, and when like isn't that restrictive? But like on some level, like the signs have been here all along and I've been kind of ignoring them. Like y'all fucking love the Zero Escape playthrough, and you love the Phoenix Wright playthrough, and like even before this, the furry stuff happened with Ad Astra and Echo, which have also just continued that trend of being like clearly the content that you guys genuinely enjoy. So I think it's time to just commit and just have a fucking visual novel slot and have that be the thing. So I think that's what we're going to do. As far as Stephanie goes and all this mess. So for those of you that don't know, Stephanie has gone back to school because her job just actually sucks. It's like, it's not a great job to begin with, but the people have made it actively worse. The leadership's horrible and so on. But the problem is that she still has to work. So she's working that job and she's going to school at the same time. And she's juggling all of her social engagements and her family and her boyfriend. And then on top of all that, when she has time, she graces us with her presence to record Echo sometimes. And so like, it's put me in a little bit of an awkward spot where the most popular content on my entire channel, as far as the actual playthroughs go and not any of the weird one-off things that do weirdly well, is chained to the most busy person I've ever met. And I do not hold that against her. I do not begrudge her any of this. I am amazed that she has has put up with this, honestly, because she has so much going on. But it leads to situations where, like, for example, this week alone, she's canceled on me twice where we had a planned session and then it just didn't work out. Like in one of the cases, they literally just kept her at work. Like we scheduled around when she was going to be off work, and then they just decided, no, you can't go home. We need you here until this time, and that's just what happens. And this is like, she works different times every week and every day. She can work at nighttime. Like, it's a nightmare. It's, I don't recommend anyone ever have a job that doesn't have consistent hours because it's such a nightmare. And that, but unfortunately, that's just not an option. Like, people don't get to choose to not have that kind of job. But boy, those kinds of jobs are fucked, aren't they? Where you find out what your hours are every week and they can just be the worst thing. In an ideal world, I would be like some of the YouTubers you've heard of, and I would make so much money that I can rent out an office space for our recording sessions, and I can hire my friends to come, like, be cast members and so on. But my reality is that I live in one room that's rented out of a larger house. I am a thoroughly D-list YouTuber or whatever that kind of scrapes by. I'm not in poverty. I'm not struggling, but I'm also not in any position to solve any of these problems for people around me. Like, I'm not on that level, as much as people want to overinflate how much money YouTubers make, mainly because the most popular and successful YouTubers like Mr. Beast also get all the most viewership, so they're the version of a YouTuber you're exposed to all the time, but that's just not the realistic outcome for most people. I like to use the video essayist example. You might be able to count on, like, just on two hands how many, like, video essayists are actually, like, wealthy full-timers that are totally haven't made. A lot of these people have day jobs, even if they seem like they make successful video essays. A lot of them are going to work every day, and then they do the video essays as a hobby and as supplemental income because they can't live off of just one popular video every 3 months and then some Patreon support. Not usually. I'm in a really weird specific situation where I've, like, tried my hardest to keep my expenses reasonably low, as far as, like, my actual, like, rent and stuff that I actually consistently have to pay. And I have a fairly strong Patreon following for what I have, like a disproportionately large Patreon following for my subscriber count, probably because of the specific way that I handle having the Patreon voted series, and also because, like, I think people really do enjoy the fact that, like, despite it being counterproductive to my own interests, I do commit to finishing the playthroughs that I start, even if it means uploading videos to almost no one for 3 months straight until that series is done or something. So I'm in a decent spot overall. Don't worry about me. But I do need to, like, viewership has fallen enough that I need to make smarter choices before that continues forever, in an attempt to get back, because everybody in their career trajectory wants to make progress upward, obviously, instead of downward year to year, so that they can have a better idea of how things are going to end up in the long term. And how much that involves pivoting to my second channel for video essays and so on, or how much that means other things, who knows, but I'm making choices in various ways based on that. But there's a few things going on there on that topic where, like, I've been here for 4 or 5 years now. Before that, I was living in Marty's house for like 4 years. Like, I'm entering into a territory where I think I'm getting ready to move again, which is its own issue. With people like Stephanie, because Stephanie is not particularly online, and she's a person who's available because she's literally my housemate that lives next door in this house. So once I move, there might not be any more Stephanie playthroughs ever again, and that sucks, obviously, because I love hanging out with Stephanie and I like doing this kind of content, and she's become. I mean, some of you are happier to meet her than me, frankly. This creates a problem for stuff like people that want the Phoenix Wright playthroughs to keep happening eventually. I'm like, I don't know if that's possible, just logistically, because right now she's so busy, and she's going to be in college, working to better herself and so on, and secure a stronger future for at least like the next year. She's just now finishing her first semester, and she has been to college before, so she's not starting from scratch, but she estimates being in school for at least another year. And like, that's like when I look at our future, I'm just like, I think we're running out of road here. Like, I'll work to, my approach here is that whenever she is available, I drop everything I'm doing, including canceling streams, just to facilitate recording the Echo playthrough with her. And I have no problem with doing that because I like doing it. It's one of our goals. It's just simply a matter of priorities. Like, okay, no Overwatch tonight because this is when Stephanie happens to be available for Echo. Let's go. But like that can be as infrequently as once a month. That's how like busy things are. That's why there's a big gap between the individual routes of Echo. And so this is why I'm considering bringing Toaster in. And by considering, I mean, I think I've pretty much decided this is going to happen. I'm going to bring Toaster in to play Arches, which is the sequel / spin-off thing to Echo, and maybe do some other visual novels and so on. And maybe I'll also go and do like Yume Nikki. Is that the one? The one visual novel that gets brought up a lot. Maybe I'll do that with Toaster or someone, and maybe I'll come back and do certain visual novels with Andrew again, just like with like akin to Zero Escape. This video is going on for so long that I'm like actually getting tired at this point. This is I haven't done these in a long time, but these kinds of update videos always are a disaster because I always want to deal with every single fucking tangential thought and over-explain the entire concept just to exhaust every avenue of the thought process, essentially. What might be fun, it might be fun to go back to Shibuya Scramble. Maybe start over with Andrew and Toaster, the two weebs, and just enjoy the Japanese culture, non-linear time travel visual novel sometime too. But yeah, I think this is going to be the new structure, and it's going to be just from a logistical level. It's going to inevitably have a rotating cast of co-hosts because like the base assumption is Stephanie, and yes, it would be ideal to play the entire Echoverse, including the Smoke Room and Arches, with Stephanie, but it's taking so long to get through just Echo, and we're like, there's a time limit on this arrangement in general, arguably. That just doesn't seem like a logistical like possibility in the long term. And then so like and everyone else involved, they're all adults that have their own schedules and so on. So I think there's going to be like the likely outcome here is that we'll have a visual novel slot that has a rotating cast where each playthrough has a different co-host or co-hosts, and that's like how I maintain that conversational dynamic that people have been enjoying, while also not putting an undue burden on any individual people that are not employees. None of these people work for me. They're just people that choose to spend time with me. Andrew being the person I started doing Let's Plays with originally in 2011. And as far as Arches go, like it should be pretty good because so Toaster has already played Echo and is a really big fan of Echo. And we have had very, very long conversations about Ad Astra and Echo, and he helped me formulate my thoughts about the Ad Astra essay at times, and it seems more than likely that he'd be involved in the writing of the Echo essay when that inevitably happens at some point, I'm sure. So he's a good candidate for a co-host on the channel. I don't know if people will specifically latch onto him as a visual novel co-host specifically, because we haven't done that before, but people have seemed to respond very positively to him showing up in the playthroughs that he has, so I don't think that he's a controversial addition. He is also, unlike Stephanie, just an all-out furry, just full-on gay man furry boy, and with an account and NSFW art and all that shit. So he's obviously not a strange choice to include in furry visual novel Let's Plays either. So that's more or less where we are. The funny thing is I planned on reading this thread at the beginning, but then I just didn't. So this was a very well organized thought process. I have a bunch of tabs open that we never got around to. I'm receiving messages everywhere, and that's distracting me. Let's just read this thread for the sake of it. So since Stephanie's busy all the time, I was kind of wondering it would be a good idea or a horrible idea to start Arches with Toaster, a fellow Echo Echo fan before I finished Echo. The results here are largely positive. There is a chunk of negative responses, but as I'll get to in a moment, I also realize this is a bad poll. But yeah, I've gone here and attached Echo, the most popular series, to somebody that's the most busy person I've ever known, and that's why it is not coming out, is the thing. But yeah, this poll isn't the best idea, though, because I don't know why people are voting no. Like, are they voting because of their knowledge on arches and why they think it's a bad idea to do this? Or are they saying that or is it just people that are anti-furry visual novel and don't like the idea of me talking about doing more of them? Or are they doing what is like an understandable but not helpful thing, which is being stubborn about the fact that they want me to wait for Stephanie, but also like logistically it's just not realistic to do everything with Stephanie because she's busy. Also, it wouldn't hurt to like finish Echo and like let Stephanie take a break from after doing 2 consecutive furry visual novels between Ad Astra and Echo, and like let her go like cover one of the Pokemon games again, or like we've been looking at Omori for the longest time. Like that might be a fun thing to do with Stephanie. Like let her play a video game again one of these days after over a year of just playing Echo Project games with her. And then here's where I talked about like what I really started this video with, which is the logistics of like, hang on, this viewership versus how I organize my schedule doesn't actually make sense anymore, does it? As far as the Echo versus Arches thing, this will be a point of confusion no matter how I explain it. It doesn't matter. And then people will do what they inevitably do, which is that somebody will confidently, incorrectly explain to somebody. I'll always see somebody ask a question about something, and then somebody else will step in to confidently be wrong about the answer. So there's no way of getting this fixed. And now that we're 45 minutes into this video, I've done the worst job at explaining this stuff anyway. But some people just like to hear the sound of my voice for too long. I am not this is not me taking a break from Echo, which is a point of confusion that's already happening with the Echo playthrough in general. Whenever we stop, every time that the Echo playthrough stops, it's only so that we can backlog the playthrough, so I can then air it uninterrupted once we start. And it's because the rate at which the videos come out outstrips the rate at which we can record them because of aforementioned logistical issues with Stephanie's overall life and everything. So I choose to specifically stop Echo after each route because that's an ending, and then we go back and start over as like a new season, essentially. And that just makes more sense to me because it's better to stop at a very obvious natural stopping point, which is like the end of the storyline, but then you go back and start over, as opposed to being like, all right, we're halfway through TJ's route and we ran out of episodes. See you in a month. We're just too busy. Sorry. So I don't want those kinds of interruptions to happen. So that's why I keep stopping Echo where I stop it. Similarly, so what happens right now is I record the other game that's airing instead of Echo, but like whenever Stephanie is ready and available, I cancel whatever plans I have to record that day, and instead I record Echo with her, and we record Echo. So the same thing would happen here, where I would be recording arches and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that I'm specifically like turning away from Echo and ignoring it. I am still dropping everything to record Echo whenever it's possible. It's just I'm also happening to play the spin-off game at the same time. And then I air Echo when it's ready and so on. So it's not a change to my priorities on Echo. It's not further delaying Echo, probably, and so on. Like, I'm still getting it recorded when I can. As far as what this will look like in the long run, I don't know exactly. I don't have a perfect idea of how long Arches is or other games involved. There might be a possibility where I get to a schedule situation where I make it so like these are already kind of bonus length episodes, like they're supposed to be in the half an hour slot, but they keep getting to be an hour plus long because of what kind of game it is. But I might alternate between Echo and Arches at one point if TJ's route becomes available, but we're also too deep into Arches with no clear stopping point or something. Or I might interrupt Arches to play to air the TJ route, or I might just let Arches go all the way to its conclusion, then air the TJ route, and then Flynn if we happen to have it done already or something. But I don't know if that's likely necessarily. I don't have a clear answer about how that plays out, but ultimately it's just like, I recognize that this isn't the ideal approach possible, but the ideal thing just isn't really realistic. And that's just what happens when you have a bunch of adult people and you have to work around all of their lives and schedules and everything. So I don't have a clear answer about how that looks in the long term, but the plan is to correctly cover everything and so on. It'll also be interesting to see how these two things play out with each other. If I do end up doing an Echo essay, then maybe Arches will just be in that instead of being a separate video or ignored entirely. If they are thematically closely tied, then maybe I do incorporate those directly or something. As far as the future of the channel for furry visual novels, will I eventually break my rule and start covering doing series for incomplete games and then be open to the idea of having to wait for the next update? I don't know. For now, I don't need to think about that for months or even longer because there's just other stuff to cover in the meantime. But conceivably, it's possible I could rotate between different furry visual novels and their updates the same way that one rotates, kind of like episodically placed with these Echo routes and so on. I don't know. This is a mess. This video is too long. I'm gonna cut it out here. Hopefully this was informational or helpful on any level to people that care about this stuff at all. The people that don't pay attention to this stuff will continue to not pay attention to this stuff. And I don't... I've been looping mentally about this stuff all day, so it was good to just kind of record it and try to explain this stuff a bit. So that's it. See you later. Bye.